welcome to this how-to on Photoshop. I'm going to go through some of the basics today. What you're going to learn is 4 things. I'm going to show you just how to open a file, simple stuff, but it's important to be able to open it to particular sizes and dimensions. I'm going to show you a little bit about the tools and what they do, or where to find out what they do. I'm going to show you how to change the color of your background, maybe put a pattern in there, change the hue, the saturation, the brightness, which we've talked about in class. I'm going to also show you what I think is a really useful function, and that is to take one little piece of a picture and just outline that and put that into your ad. So change it to another document. Now this is really useful because what it means you can do is you don't need to use a whole photo, but you can use just the element that you actually want from that photo to put it into your campaign. And once it's in that particular ad, I'm going to show you how you can change the size of that. Not only that though, but you can change and warp it, you can rotate it, a whole bunch of other things like that. So I think that's a really useful function to go through today. And lastly, I'm going to show you how to add your text. So your headlines, or if you've got any body copy, you're going to need to know how to use that function as well. Okay, let's get started. So the first function I'm going to teach you about today is just to simply open and create a file of a particular dimension. Now, when you have an advertising a magazine or a digital platform like Instagram and Facebook, they have particular dimensions that they need you as an advertiser to provide to be able to work well on that particular platform. So I'm going to show you how to do that for a print ad today. So first of all, you won't necessarily be in Photoshop. If you want to get into Photoshop, you'll have to go to your Creative Cloud and press open. I'm already in there now, and this is the first screen that you'll come to. So what you'll find here, you know, after you've used this for a while, is you'll have your recents here. There's also some stuff about building your skills. So if you want to learn anything beyond what I'm giving you here today, you can go there. So what we need to do today though, is just go to the Create New. Now, there's a few different custom types here already, but I'm going to make sure that I have the particular dimensions that a particular print campaign wanted. So I have a width of 420 millimeters. Oh, okay, so 420 millimeters, and also 594 on the height. Okay, so what we need to show is that we want an orientation that is portrait, okay, because we're going within a magazine. So generally, when you're looking at online stuff, 72 dpi or pixels per inch is actually what you would need. But if we're doing a magazine or a print, it's usually 300 dpi so that the print comes out really well. So I'm going to make it 300 dpi here. I've got color mode, which is RGB, which is great. That's what I want. And I can see the color profiles there. Now, at this particular point, you've also got another option if you know already what you want to do with your background. So you can choose at this particular point a particular background. Now, this is a print ad, so I don't need to have just web colors. And I'm going to choose sort of a deep red in there. Now, you can often click this just to change it to a nearby color that you know is actually within the scope of what can be printed. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. So now I've got my background color, I've got my width and height correct, I've got my DPI right, and so I can create. Oh, and lastly, sorry, if you want to give it a label. So we're going to do a COVID advert. Okay, and I'll say print and create. Excellent. So there you've got the base of your print advert, and then it's just a matter of adding the bits in that you need, your elements. The second thing that I wanted to show in this video is just the very basics of the tools that you can use in Photoshop. There are actually a lot of functions in Photoshop, but I'm just going to briefly show you how to find out what the tools do. So if you look over here on this panel here, this is your toolbox over here. And one of the great things about Photoshop now is that if you hover over each of these, it actually shows you in video and pictures what that actually does. So you've got a move tool, so you can move pictures around. You know, you can select, lasso things, etc. So if you're ever wondering what it is that any of these particular tools are, you can, you know, the brush tool, etc. You can just hover over it and it will show you about it. Now, one thing also that you might want to know is that within each of these tools, you can right click on them and select what is generally a similar but not quite the same type of function tool. So instead of selecting a rectangle, in this instance, I can select an elliptical or a circle, for instance. I'll go back to that. So yeah, some important ones here that I use a lot. I mean, obviously moving things around. We're going to show you a little bit about these lasso ones later. Cropping is always important if you've got a particular picture and you want to crop that out. Okay, I'm going to edit and do that. Eyedropper, very important for if you want a particular color. You know, if I want to go back to that particular red, etc. Of course, your brush tool, which is your paintbrush, and there's a few different types of those there. The eraser tool, you know, if you want to actually remove something from a picture, for instance. And I think the blurring tools, you know, if you want something to be a little bit more out of focus, for instance, that's one way to do that. And if you want to put particular shapes in as well. And lastly, of course, is the text. Okay, which we're going to learn how to do. Well, what's down here is actually your colors. So if you have a look here, if you click on this button here, you can always go back to black and white. You'll notice there that the color was on the red, so it didn't actually change to the color that I wanted it to be. But, and I can change my size here so you can see this a little bit better. It's not too dissimilar to probably functions that you'll find on Word and PowerPoint and things like that. But yeah, so if you want to change your particular color or you want to change what's in the foreground versus the background, you just switch this over here. So if you want to change from black to white, that's useful there. As you said, you can kind of use this in conjunction with the eyedropper if you want a particular color there, and it'll actually change to that particular color. Okay, so that's the tools. The next task I wanted to show you today is about colour. So what we want to be able to do, I know we chose our background colour at the beginning, but you may have either the background or an element, something you've actually selected that you want to actually change colour. So what you'll do is you look over here in this colour section here. You'll notice a bunch of different tabs. I'll talk about those later, but in particular, if we're talking about colour, you'll notice a few things. So from our design principles class, we talked about, if you recall, hue, saturation, and lightness and brightness. And all of those things you can actually see here. So here, this looks very familiar, I hope. This here is the hue. So it's the rainbow of colors that you have. So you can change that as you wish. We also have lightness and brightness and saturation as well. So how much of the color you can actually see. Now, I actually prefer to look at this in a different view. So what you can do is you can actually click to this here, and I actually like what's called the color wheel, only because it allows me specific hue, saturation and brightness, so I know what level that I've got it at. So what you see here is that here is where our color is right now. Now I might want to change my hue to something like, let's say blue. Okay. Now what we see there is that it's quite a dark blue, but what we can do, let's have a look at it. What you need to do if you want to change a particular colour and you want a particular thing or a particular background to change, you need to go over to your tools here. Now it's not actually showing yet, so you need to go to what is the gradient tool, right click there and change to what's called the paint bucket. And the paint bucket, which you might be a little bit familiar with from things like paint, you just simply click on that and it will change to whatever is the foreground colour in your colour swatch here. So what we can see there is, you know, a quite a royal sort of blue, but maybe what we want to do is actually to increase the saturation on that. Okay, because we've heard that if you increase the saturation, maybe that will create some more positive valence and response. You could also potentially change the brightness on that as well. So that becomes this color here. Again, you simply click and it changes the color. A couple of other things that you might want to look at there. Instead of actually just changing the color of the background, which you can now see is changed down here in the layer, you might actually want to put what's called a color fill into your ad. Now what you can see here, these are sometimes when you first come to it or click like this. What this is a whole bunch of different color swatches, and I might want to say, for example, match with that with something like this pastel here. Now that is a color block. What I can do here, if I want to change the opacity or how transparent that is, I can actually go here and change how much of that comes through. So if I've got the blue behind, that's a mix of those two particular colors. Right, if I want it full block, I can do that. Now, one thing that this does, a color fill rather than the background, is it allows you to have what's called gradients. So if you have a transparent gradient, which is here, and I want to pull that over, it actually allows me to have this sort of, I guess there's gradual color change within that. Okay, so that's one thing that's often a technique that's used. The last one I wanted to show you is patterns. So maybe you don't want the stock standard block. What you might want is something more pattern. So Photoshop actually has several sort of patterns here that I've got on their palette. I'm not sure, I'm assuming you'd probably be able to bring some in as well if you could get them from other places. But that gives you a different sort of background there as well. And again, what you could always do if you didn't want it to be so block is to change the opacity of that so that you know, it comes through as something that's slightly different. Okay, and not quite as the block color. That's it for colors for now. All right, this is probably going to be one of the most useful things that I'm going to talk to you about and teach you today. What I want to talk to you about is how to get a particular picture or an element of a picture into your advert. So I know a lot of you guys have gone out and searched for images, but you maybe have a whole picture where there's lots of stuff in the background that you didn't necessarily need, or you just want one particular object from the image that you've actually downloaded. So I'm going to show you how to isolate that and put that into your ad so you can reshape it, size it, etc. Now, I'm going to show you also at this particular point some something that you'll probably really enjoy, and that is actually this Learn Photoshop area. So we're going to do the original, I'm going to show you how to do this originally within the Learn Photoshop, and then we'll do it again on our own ad. So this is really useful. This is the Learn tab. Okay, and you'll have that come up, and this has a whole series of very short little tutorials that it takes you through within Photoshop. So selecting part of an image, working with layers, saving your images, fixing photos, making them warm, straightening them out, some creative effects there as well, duplicating stuff, adding a person to an image, etc. Okay, so you should really have a look through those, you know, if you're not doing too much over the break, or you're feeling a little bit tired, just go through these. They're very simple and very directed and great for your skills. So what I'm going to go through for us is I'm going to go into the fundamental skills, and I'm going to take you to using a layer mask to add an object to an image. So this, when you do the tutorials, they generally have their own pictures come up, and what they're going to teach us today is to go from this to this. Okay, so putting this particular object within this picture. Now, what you'll notice here is that they've got a layer, different layers here. Okay, and what they're going to ask us to do is to, this is how you would originally have that layer, okay, where you're just adding the picture that you had that has the object in it directly into the picture or your ad, okay, that you want to put it on top of. So you want to select the layer that has the object that you want, okay, and you're going to use what's called the mask icon down here. And what this does is creates a little white box here, and this basically shows what areas of this picture you want to be shown and which ones you want to be deleted, okay. Let's click next. Okay, to do that, what we're essentially going to do, click this to make some edits. What we're going to be doing is brushing away, so that's why I use the paintbrush tool, brushing away the bits that you don't want. Now, whenever you use the paintbrush tool, you can resize that dependent on how much or how detailed or how big you actually want your paintbrush to be. And also, so let's do it to the 150 that they suggest. And also how hard you want it to be. So whether there's a soft, fuzzy edge around it or whether there's actually quite a hard edge, and they've said they want it to be about 50%. Okay, enter. All right. So there's what we need to do as well when you're using this particular masking tool is you want to make sure that you've got black and white here. So you can always click on that. There are two boxes here. If you want to change a particular foreground or background, you click on that particular square and this box comes up. Now, when you're using the masking tool, you're either looking at using white or black. So we're going to choose the black area there. Press OK. Now, what that does is allows us to paint around that particular item. And what it does is it removes the areas of that particular picture that we don't want to see. Okay, so we're going to keep doing that until what we get is just the bit of the pencil. I'm going to remove the shadow as well, I think. Okay. Now, obviously, I've got quite a large brush here. If I want to get really close, and I feel like that brush is a little bit too big, I can always change the size of that and go in a little bit more specifically. I can always zoom in as well if I don't feel comfortable doing that at this level. Okay. Right. So I think that should be okay. Let's not be too concerned about that. Okay, so let's say I'm happy with that. I probably would brush that up a little bit more. Whoops. But I've accidentally gone a bit further over, but that's okay. Actually, it's probably a good idea. So what I'm going to do next, okay, so I can actually change the color to white again. So I go here, change that to white, okay. Yep, so we're changing that to white and press OK. And I've accidentally gone here, but if I change it to white, it actually adds it back in. So there's no worry if you accidentally rub out the wrong piece. Okay. Okay, so white lets you reveal it, black takes it away. Okay, so we're going to click on next. Now we've basically got what we want. We can change it back to black. They want us to do this just again. Okay, paint the rest of the area around the pencil so that only the pencil remains. Yeah, well, we're there already. I don't want to be quite so big. Move that down to 19. Yeah, and I can go in and do the little bits here if I really wanted to. Okay, I'm happy with that. So now we can essentially do what we want here. We can drag, press Control T, or you can always go to File, Edit, Transform and Scale. This is a good area here, this transform. It lets you do different things. And I could change the size of that if I wanted to. Make it really big, make it really small. Okay. Okay, now what we saw on that particular picture they originally had was that the pencil was in a different direction. So I can actually move that around to where I want. Oh, and I can actually see I probably need to rub that a little bit out as well. I won't bother about it now. But so I want to move that pencil. But what if I want to actually change the direction? So what I can do here is I can go to Edit, I can go to Transform, and I can rotate that. So just like you do on things like Photoshop, etc., I can click on there, I can move it again, move it to where it is that I want. Okay, or maybe I want it to be. Okay. Some other things I can do for transforming, I can skew it a bit, depending on whether I want to make it fatter, shorter, etc. Okay, just depends on what it is that you actually want to do. Okay, great. So I promised that we would do this with our ad now. So we're going to look for a particular image that we wanted, and one of the things that I'm going to do for my COVID ad is use a symbol, the couch, for staying at home. So I found this nice black leather couch here. I want to move this picture, so I'm going to Control A, select all, Control C, copy. I can put that over to my Control V, pop that into my ad here. Now it's a lot smaller because the DPI is actually quite a lot smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit, and I'm going to transform, and I'm going to scale it. So I'm going to increase that. Okay, sometimes that makes it a little bit blurry, but hopefully it should be okay. All right. Now, I can do the same thing that I did before with this layer. I can go to, let's go back to the masking. I have my particular layer here. I want to use my brush tool. Okay, and I've got it at about 35. Yeah, maybe I'll increase the size of that so I can get the big bits of the first part. Okay. Yep, that looks good. Then I want to go to make sure, oh, it's already on black. That's fantastic. And I can start to get rid of some of my picture. Okay, I don't want those floorboards, etc. Okay. Now, there is actually another way to do this rather than going all the way around. So I'm going to show you that also. And it really just depends on you, what you feel most comfortable doing. Okay. Another way to do that is go to the original, oops, edit undo, get rid of that brush tool. Okay. We'll go back to the original picture. Okay. And what we can actually do is select part of the image. So to do that, you use this particular thing here called Quick Selection Tool. So what this does, if I'm on the right layer, make sure you're always on the layer that you're trying to select. I'm going to increase the size of this. So view, zoom in, so I've got a bit more space, is I want to actually select. So I'm just clicking and dragging over the area that I want to select. Now, generally this has essentially it covers a particular area. Okay, so it looks for lightness and darkness, etc. And you can change the size of that if you want to be a little more sensitive or not. Like if I want to get these little bits here, I might need to be a little bit more just here, just to get the tops of those, of that couch up here. Oops, edit, undo. Yeah, okay, so some of it obviously is a little bit too close to the colour there. Okay, so maybe in the end I might have to try to increase the contrast perhaps, or something like that. Okay. Whoop. No, edit, undo. I just have to get a quick. Okay, so obviously I'm going to have to work a little bit on that. So it's starting to go all the way around now. So I'm just going to undo that quick selection. But you can see how that could actually happen. Now what you can do here is you press Command-Shift-I, and what it does is instead of selecting that part, it does the inversion. Okay, so it selects the bit around that, and you can just Once you've done that, Control-Shift-I, then you just delete the area around there. So in the end, once I've got my text and this together, I probably would need a logo for what the source is coming from, etc. It's a very simple kind of ad. I'd probably change some of the dimensions, but I think this is a little bit boring. So one of the things I did is I created a few different types. What I did is I created a bit of a shadow here with an ellipse tool. Okay, so I've got the ellipse and put that around, as you can see here, and made that a little bit feathered, what's called feathered. So that allows you to say let's feather that at 100, and you can change the different colors of that. So it ultimately creates almost like a shadow. Another thing that I did is I went to, I actually warped it. So again, you can go to edit. I need to be on the right layer. Edit, transform, warp. Okay, and it allows me to actually warp this. Okay, so it makes it a little bit more interesting in terms of shape in the end. Okay, so you can do quite a lot of things just by playing around with those edit, transform functions to make your objects just that little bit more interesting. Okay, that's it. All the best, and don't forget to use the Photoshop Learn, because there's so many more things that you could easily learn how to do, and you can go through and have a look and see if you've got any particular images, if there's just some simple tutorials for you to go through. Good luck, and can't wait to see the results.